Hello and welcome to this video on how to print and cut on a Cricut machine. Now I did have a video on this that I made a couple of years ago, but Cricut Design Space has updated quite a bit since then, so I thought I'd do an updated video tutorial to show you how to print and cut on your Cricut to make beautiful creations just like these, and some steps in Design Space to make your own beautiful print and cut stickers or images like this. And here are a few projects I've made over the years with print and cut. So all the little monsters on this card were printed on my home printer, but instead of me having to cut around them all with scissors, I got my Cricut to do it for me. So much easier. And you can use it on your own photographs too, for example, to make shadow boxes or even greetings cards with your favourite photos. And of course, it doesn't stop there. You can use print and cut to add detail to images that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise have. For example, all the lovely flowers and butterflies in here, and the pop-out effect in here. You've got a lovely little gnome, all through print and cut. So if that's whetted your appetite for a little bit of print and cut action, let's see how to do it in Cricut Design Space. Let's begin by having a look at where to find some images that you can use for print and cut on a Cricut. You can of course also use your photographs or images that you found elsewhere, but for this video I'm going to be showing it with the Cricut Access subscription images. To find them, start a new project in Design Space and then get into Images over on the left. And then you can search for whatever it is that you want to find. So maybe I'll do flowers. And this gives you all the different images in there for flowers. If you're specifically looking for an image which is designed for print and cut, then down the left-hand side, look down these different settings and under Operation Type, change it to print and cut. And that will filter the images to ones that are only available for print and cut. And lots of them you'll see have got kind of a white outline on them, which is the bit that the Cricut will cut out to show all the picture. So I'll choose one of those ones so that I can have a little look at how that looks on the canvas in a moment. But what I also want to show you is that you don't have to rely just on those print and cut images. You can choose any cut image, whether it's one layer, for example, this flower, or several different layers, for example, this flower, and you can format them to turn them into print and cut images. So we'll do that. We'll press Add to Canvas. Here are my 3 different flowers. So this one, you can see this is a print and cut because it says that in the Layers panel here, and also under the Operations drop-down, it says print and cut. You can also tell because it's got lots of shading and intricate colours in the design, which it wouldn't be possible to cut from your different colours of cardstock. This type of effect is only possible when printing. It's also got a white border around it. It's a little bit hard to see, so let's change the colour of my canvas by clicking blank canvas down here, and then you can change the colour. Let's go for a dark blue. So you can see the outline, and this is where the Cricut will cut. So this will end up kind of looking like a sticker. And then I've got this one here, which at the moment is a cut layer. It says basic cut. It's just one layer. If I wanted to turn this into a print and cut, I can, it's actually not letting me do it at the moment. The option we would need is flatten. I'm guessing that's just because it's one layer. What we can do instead is go in here and change it to print and cut. And now this would be printed on my home printer. However, that's not actually going to help very much because you can see the lines of my canvas through the holes in this flower, which means that my Cricut would cut all of these bits out of my printed image. So it really wouldn't be beneficial to do that on a print and cut rather than, say, cutting it from vinyl or just from black cardstock. What we could do is turn it into a sticker. So to do that, I'm going to give it a nice border just like this one. So with it clicked, I'll go into Offset and then choose an offset. Now it's a bit hard to see because of my blue, but there's my offset layer, and I'll make it white. And now it's got all of these gaps in it. I don't want those. So press contour, hide all contour. And now if I line those up, align center, you see I've now got the flatten option available. We've got 1, 2 layers, but I press flatten. It turns it into one layer, and it's now a print then cut. So now what this would do is it's still going to print my black flower, but the Cricut will only cut around the edge of this white. And you know it's going to do that because you can't see any of my blue grid through the gaps. So we've just made a really quick and easy sticker. We can do something similar with this pink flower. It's got exactly the same problem at the moment, which is that it's going to cut. If I turn this into a print then cut, it will cut all of these bits where you can see blue, and I don't want it to do that. So what I'm going to do is go to my bottom layer in there and press offset, give it another offset and press apply. I've done quite a thin one this time. Go into contour, hide all contours and change it to white. I'm still not quite finished because I still need to select the flower and that offset layer and press flatten. Now this is just all one print then cut layer, and this will print on my home printer, and the Cricut will only cut around the edge here. So anything that you have in Design Space, if it's multiple layers, you can press that flatten button to turn it into a print then cut. And you can do it with text too. So let's go and choose some text, and I will write Sarah, make that a nice pink, and we'll change it to, actually I'm going to do it two ways. I'm going to do it that way and then also change the font on the second one. There's a font in here which I downloaded from Creative Fabrica called I Love Glitter. I'm going to use that one because I know that has all the letters touching. Okay, so now I have two different ones. If I was to turn this into a print then cut, my Cricut is still going to cut out each individual letter. And on this one, it will still cut around the edge of it like I want, but it kind of seems a little bit pointless. Again, why wouldn't I just cut this from cardstock or vinyl? Well, we can make it a little bit prettier by adding some different offsets. For example, I could do a darker pink around the edge and then give it one more offset and make that white. Use my contour button to fill in the gaps and then flatten all of those together. And now I've got a fun multicolored sticker which would cut, and it would only cut around the edge again. With this one, we can do similar. And I don't really like how far the A and the R are. Let's see if I can move that about a little bit closer. Oh, that was too much. No, that's changing everything, isn't it? Not just those two letters. Okay, never mind. I'll keep it as it is just for this demo. So we can do something similar here, but we're going to need to make bigger offsets so that the letters end up touching. That was quite a small one, so I can make that darker again. But when I add my next one, I need that to be really chunky so that it all touches. And then I can make that white. And I'm actually going to fill in some of these other gaps because that gap in the middle of the H is really thin. I think the Cricut would struggle with that. So I'm going to just make a couple of shapes, put them over any small areas in that white, and then select them and that white offset and go combine weld to turn them into one layer. Drag that down, select all of those and flatten. So now when this is cut out after I've printed it, it's only going to cut around the edge. And this is our stickers. So I've got a nice selection here. I think we're ready to move on to the actual making step. But before we do that, I just want to have a little word about sizing. You might find when you're doing print then cut, when you make it a certain size, you end up with this little exclamation mark in the layers panel. And when you click that, you can see what the problem is. This is telling me it's too big to print on A4 paper. And then you have two options. You can click Auto Resize Image, which will make it smaller so that it will fit onto the paper size you have selected, or you can change the page size. Now, if you've got a standard size printer, that's probably not going to be that suitable. So Auto Resize Image is a good one to choose. That's made it so it will now fit onto my A4 sheet. And these are all pretty big at the moment, so I'm just going to make them smaller. I'm not worrying too much about the size because this is just a test project, just to show how it all works, but I would like them to fit onto one sheet. So let's give that a try and press Make It. And not quite. It is tricky when you've given things an offset on this screen because you can't really see the offset. So when you're moving things about, you might accidentally end up overlapping them. So I'm just going to change some of these, make them a little bit smaller. And now hopefully that'll all fit onto one, which it will. Brilliant. Okay. I've got my A4 paper selected in the paper size, and now I can press Continue. And it's going to complain at me because I haven't actually got my Cricut machine plugged in at the minute, so I will need to do that. But first, let's take a look at how to actually print this. There'll be an option at the top which says Send to Printer. So I'll click on that one. Choose your printer in the drop down, and you want to make sure Add Bleed is on, so make sure that green toggle is selected. Bleed adds an extra little bit of colour around the edge of your images so that if the Cricut doesn't quite cut it exactly right, you've still got that colour, you won't get any white edges of the card. Now for this one, it's not going to make any difference because my images all have white offsets on, so all it's going to do is just have a bit more white around the edge. But if you're doing anything without those white edges, definitely keep the bleed on. I always add it on no matter what I'm doing. And then you also want to tick the box that says Use System Dialog. This means that we'll be able to modify our printer settings after we click this print button. This is really important for getting a better quality print. And this will look different depending on what type of printer you've got. Every printer is different, but on mine, I can click into Preferences, and that opens this window where I can choose my paper. I'm going to do this on some glossy photo paper. If you can't find the exact paper, just choose something that is kind of vaguely relevant. I tend to use glossy photo paper even if I'm doing something like sticker paper, because I find that does give a really nice quality print. And then also have a look in your settings for something called print quality and change that to the highest setting that you can. It might say high like mine does, or it might say best or something like that. But just make sure you switch it to that. And if you're having problems when you're printing that you're getting horizontal lines appearing all the way down the print, that probably means that you need to up your print quality to get a better print because it will put more ink on the page. So if you are having any problems with maybe colours not looking right or there being problems with how it's printed, just check your settings and then press OK. And then I'll go ahead. I still need to run over to my printer and put my sheet of photo paper in. So I'm going to pause this video, go and do that, and then hit print, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Here's my printout on my glossy photo paper. You can see I've got lovely, good quality print and pretty colours. Now we can't see those white edges at the moment because it's white on white, but they will magically appear once we've cut this out. So what I need to do now is add this onto my cutting mat, line it up with the top left of the mat. There we go. And these black lines here are registration marks. That's how the Cricut reads what you've put on the paper, so it knows where to cut. There's a little sensor in the Cricut which will look for those black lines, and that's how it lines things up. It's very clever. I'm using a brayer tool to make sure this is really well stuck down to my mat. You could also use just a household rolling pin or something like that. Now you might find when you are moving on to the next step in Design Space, it asks you to calibrate your cutting machine, especially if you've never done print and cut before, or if your Design Space has recently done an update. Calibration is really important, so if you get that message, make sure you follow the process. It's very step by step. The screen tells you exactly what to do, and basically it involves printing out a test sheet. A bit like how when you get a new printer, it sometimes does a test sheet just to make sure everything's working. And then you'll load that into your Cricut and it will cut out some squares and boxes and lines on that sheet, just so that you can check it's cutting where it's supposed to. And if it isn't, that's how you can fix it. So if your Cricut is ever doing print and cut and not quite cutting where it is supposed to, you can get into your settings in Design Space at any time and run the print and cut calibration. That's my number one tip if you're having any problems, is just to run that calibration, and that should hopefully fix it. But now I can go back into Design Space and start cutting. Now that I've printed out my sheet, you can see my number one step over here has changed to printed, and it's moved me on automatically to choose my base material. I like to cut photo paper as the heavy cardstock setting. For the type of paper I'm using, that seems to work best. And then it's just the same as anything else you'd put in your Cricut. You just need to load it in, press that go button, and watch it do its magic. I do have some video footage of the print and cut process actually working to show you how it reads the sensor lines and how it does all the cutting. However, this is from an older video that I had made a while ago, where I went through the process in loads of detail, and I thought I've already done this and I explained it, I think, quite well when I did it that time. So rather than record it new for this video, I'm going to include that little clip next, which is why the thing I'm about to put into my Cricut does not look the same as what we've been making. But don't worry, once that clip has finished, I will show you how my little flower stick has turned out using exactly the same process. Once your paper's on the mat, choose your material. I'm using heavy cardstock. Load your mat into the Cricut machine and press the load button, and then that's going to go and load the mat for you. Once it's loaded, press the go button. A light will come on your Cricut machine and it's going to go over your paper and look for those registration marks on the corners. This is how the Cricut knows where it's actually going to cut, because it reads those bits on the corners and then knows where everything else goes in the middle. It does take a couple of minutes, so be patient. Once all the registration marks has been found, it will switch into cut mode and then it will come back over and start cutting out the pyramids. Mine's double cutting all of the squares because I set it on heavy cardstock, and on the Maker 3 that means it does each cut line twice, so don't worry if yours isn't doing that. Once it's finished cutting, eject the mat and then it's done. You can see it's cut out perfectly along all of those squares. I've got a slight problem on mine, which is that it's marked some of my printed piece because of the star wheels on the machine. To stop that from happening, what you can do before you actually put your material into cut is to move the 4 little star wheels, these little white plastic wheels on your machine, all the way to the edge. They just slide along the bar. These help the machine to feed in the mat, but it doesn't matter if you put them over to the side just for this project. Just remember to put them back when we're done. And by moving them to the edge, it means it's not going to mark your printed material. Here's the sheet of the flowers we created in the first part of this video, and I've now cut it on the Cricut. You can kind of just about see those cut lines around the edge. So let's take it off the mat and see what we've ended up with. So this is just going to take all my excess off, which is fine. Oh, I don't think it's quite cut through on that one. No, I did. Okay, so now you can see better. And we've got all of those white edges. The Cricut hasn't done any cutting in the middle of my images, only around those edges. And it's done a perfect job. Let's just take them all off so you can see. And because I just did these on photo paper, they don't have any adhesive on, but I could easily glue them to something. You could have used sticker paper, and then you would have had some ready-made stickers straight away. But just look at how perfect that is. That white border is beautiful all the way around the edge. And with my name, all my letters are joined together. So it was really, really easy. And if I was doing something like a scrapbook page where I wanted to add a name, then this is a lovely way to do that. Here's my flower. And this one I added a much thinner white to the edge. If you wanted to, you could do it without the offset. Just make sure that you fill in any gaps in the middle with white, otherwise it will try and cut out those gaps. And there's my little simple flower. And there we go. That was the basics of how to do print and cut on a Cricut machine. And as I showed you at the beginning, there are so many different ways that you can use print and cut images, whether it's for greetings cards, scrapbook pages, adding photographs, for example, this pyramid topper of my dog. I have a separate video on YouTube on how to make this. Or pop-out cards. Again, this is another free project from my website. Got a little print and cut gnome in there. It's got lovely dimension to this card. Or even shadow boxes and adding photographs to that. There are so many things you can do, and if you like print and cut as much as I do, you will be very excited, hopefully, to know that I have several projects coming out very soon which do use print and cut. So stay tuned, keep an eye on my YouTube channel, they'll be out very soon. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions about print and cut, please just leave me a comment down below in this video and I will do my best to help you out. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye!